Okay, so Shalom. Shalom. Let me go test this. I want to make sure everybody can hear me. Give me a minute. Testing, testing. Testing, testing. Okay. All right. I want to tell y'all the purpose for this message, right? I want y'all to understand the purpose of this message. Okay. I find that this message, this is only part one. Okay. I'm going to do part two sometime pretty soon. I'm not going to wait too much longer. I got a few messages that I want to give y'all. Okay. There's a few messages that I want to give y'all. Now, I know how a lot of people watch my message. Okay. I know how a lot of you do it. Okay. You don't actually press on to the message. You watch the words. That's all right. At the end of the day, I don't want credit for anything. But this message is because there's a lot of people out there that are very natural minded, that's very carnal minded. And many of you need to have an understanding of what's going on. Okay? I want you all to understand something the second part is going to be better. I just kind of want to open some things up here for a minute, if you don't mind. Okay? So, all right, so I want you all to pay attention. This message is about the Nephilim. A lot of people are having a problem. A lot of people are having a problem with believing the Nephilim, excuse me, with believing that the Nephilim ever existed. There's a lot of people out there that are having a problem with believing that the Nephilim ever existed. Now, if you go talk to a church, if you go talk to a camp, and if you go talk to a mosque, they will tell you that these things are not important, that they're stupid, and that they're corny. And I want to explain to you the importance of believing these type of things. And I want you to understand that this is ultimately the problem. See, it gets a little deep because there's a lot of Negroes that's running around, and you believe that us Negroes, you believe that we are the children of the book. And this message is for everybody tonight. A lot of people believe that we are the children of the book. You take certain things out of the Bible that you want to believe, and you take certain things and you don't believe certain things in the Bible because you don't want to believe them. I want you all to understand it is not your choice what is true and not true in the scriptures. The scriptures have been given to us, and everything that the scripture says is the truth. Okay? Now, I have a very important scripture that I want to open up with. I want to go to Lamentations. I want to go to Lamentations chapter 2. I want to go to Lamentations chapter 2. And I want to go to verse 13. I want to go to Lamentations. I want to go to chapter 2. And I want to go to verse 13. Lamentations. Let me go here on the computer because I can see it a little bit better. Lamentations chapter 2. We're going to start off at verse 13. Now, I want everybody to pay very close attention to what I'm about to say to you all. Okay? I'm going to take this message nice and slow. It's not really a long message. It really shouldn't last. It really shouldn't last 2 hours. I should be able to get this message out of the way in an hour and a half. I want to go to Lamentations. There's a book inside the Bible. A lot of you didn't know that. There's a book inside the Bible. It's called Lamentations. Another word for lamentations is sorrow or anguish. Okay? So I want to go to anguish, Lamentations, chapter 2, verse 13. And I want to read until I want to stop. Okay? It says, what thing shall I take to witness for thee? What thing shall I liken to thee, O daughter of Jerusalem? So this is black. This is referring to the Negroes. O daughter of Jerusalem, what shall I equal to thee, that I may comfort thee, O virgin daughter of Zion? For thy breach is great like the sea. Who can heal you? It says your prophets. Whose prophets? Negro prophets. The prophets of black people have seen vain have seen vain and foolish things for you. So what's happening here is we have leaders among us who see vain, empty, and foolish things for our people. And they have not discovered thine iniquity. So the leaders of our people, primarily is talking about all of our leaders, but primarily the leaders that read the Bible. But it's not just talking about the leaders that read the Bible. It's also talking about the politicians of our people. And it's also talking about the popular people of our people. The popular people such as the internet gurus and the entertainers. So the teachers in the church, the teachers in these camps, and the teachers in these mosques, along with the internet gurus and the entertainers, None of these people have discovered our iniquity as a whole nation, as a black people. None of these people understand our flaw to turn away our captivity, but have seen for us false burdens and causes of banishment. He's going to say, all that pass by clap their hands at thee. They hiss and wag their head at the daughter of Jerusalem, saying, is this the city that men call the perfection of beauty, the joy of the whole world? The Caucasian, the Arab, the Chinaman, the Japanese man, they all clap their hands at us and they turn their heads and they say, these are supposed to be the people that are spoken about in the Bible. These are supposed to be the people that these are supposed to be the people that are the children of Israel. These are supposed to be the people that are the descendants of the Most High. All thine enemies have opened their mouth against us. They hiss and gnash the teeth. They say, we have swallowed her up. Certainly, this is the day that we looked for. We have found. We have seen it. The Lord had done that which he had devised. He had fulfilled his word that he had commanded in the days of old. Now, this is the Old Testament. So the Old Testament, so the days of old is referring to the time of Moses. He says he had fulfilled his word that he had commanded in the days of old. He had thrown down and hath not pitied, and he hath caused thine enemy to rejoice over you. He is Yahuwah has caused our enemies to rejoice over us. He hath set up the horn of thine adversaries. So all the other nations, until Putin, when Putin announced what he had in his vault, do understand that all the nations are now looking. The Caucasians are saying, these are the people that are in the Bible, that the scriptures say are the Israelites, that the scriptures say are the Jews, with their pants sagging down. They have no wisdom. They have female rappers preaching about telling the men to come all up in their pussies and come on their mouths, and then she's gonna take the $5 and buy some dirt with it. Listen, I want you all to understand why these things are so hard for you all to understand. Why giants and angels, fallen angels, are so hard for the average mind, for the lowly of comprehension level, for those whom are on a low frequency. I want you to understand why certain things in the Bible are very complicated for you to grasp. I'm going to go back up here, and it says, verse 13, it says, what thing? No, let's go to verse 14. It says that our prophets, the leaders of our people, have seen vain and foolish things for thee, and they have not discovered our iniquity to turn away our captivity. Well, it's talking about any black person that are to call themselves in a leader position. But it's primarily talking about the leaders who teach the Bible, the leaders whom are in religion, whether it be a camp, whether it be a mosque, or whether it be a church. Now, I'm not going to be disrespectful with this, but there are a lot of Muslims right now who don't have a clue about what I'm speaking about. It's just true. Because most likely, many Muslims never believed in the first place. That's because many of you, not all of you, many of you, on a low frequency of thought and understanding, even as it goes for the people, the Christians, and the camps, whom think that they are not one and the same for the most part. All 501c3 tell lies. But I want you all to understand something right here. There are a lot of teachers that's going around and they say, follow the commandments, follow the commandments. But they're not explaining to people specifically how the gospel says to follow the commandments. Yes, we have to keep the commandments, but we do not keep the commandments today in the exact same way that we attempted to keep the commandments in the days of old. Not saying that you don't need self-control. Self-control is one of the fruits of the Spirit. However, if we were able to keep the commandments according to the Leviticus law, then we wouldn't be here today, back here in captivity, in confusion, Babylon. The reason why you have Muslims and Christians and you have different organizations of black people and you all believe in something different is because we are all in a land spiritually that goes by the name spiritually of Babylon. The word Babylon means confusion. You are in religion. You love Easter, the Easter Bunny, and Christmas and Thanksgiving because you are confused. You are confused. And because our teachers have constantly told us we are to follow the laws without understanding and comprehending how to truly follow the law, is the reason why we have all turned our backs, our people have turned our back on the Most High. Because what we don't understand is the true God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is the law. And once you all have become spiritual fornicators and prostitutes and ran off and have worshipped false gods and have conducted yourselves like heathens, participating in their practices and their traditions, once you have done these things, you have been a traitor toward the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who is the law. Many of our teachers pull up the 10 Commandments and they tell our people, follow the commandments, follow the commandments. But they don't explain to you how. And the very few people who explain to you how, you don't believe it because it's too far-fetched. The problem with our people, the first and foremost thing that we must understand is that we have to believe. We have to have faith. You can't want to follow the commandments of Moses and not believe in the things that the Bible says. Cherry picking is very dangerous. And the reason why many of you don't believe in fallen angels and you don't believe in the Nephilim is because your leaders have cherry picked the scriptures, and camps run around telling you that it makes no sense for a giant to have sex with a human woman without even understanding how it actually happened. Now, I want to move on because we don't have that much time, right? I want to go to Genesis chapter 6. I want to go to Genesis chapter 6. A carnal mind is death. A carnal mind is foolishness. And a carnal mind does not understand a goddamn thing. For those of you out there who are teachers and you have a carnal, natural, ordinary, lame understanding and a low frequency of mind, you are not qualified to teach. If you don't believe the spiritual things of the Bible, then you are unqualified to be a teacher, and you're unqualified to move a people forward in understanding and comprehension. See, you have to understand that the law of Moses is a natural. Yes, the law is spiritual, but I'm going to explain this in a specific way. The law of Moses is a carnal law, but the Bible says it's spiritual. And listen, just listen to what I'm saying to you. You have a carnal law within the Bible, and then you have the laws of the universe, and you have the laws of heaven. The laws of heaven supersede the laws of Moses, because when you believe the laws of heaven, you automatically fall in line with the laws of Moses because you become a believer. You cannot follow the law of Moses without believing and comprehending the spiritual things. For spiritual things must be spiritually discerned. For you people that walk around here, and many of you, you can't see past the internet. You cannot see past the internet. You are a carnal, low frequency type of person. And you can catch an attitude if you want to. You can call the things of the Bible, the spiritual things of the Bible, foolish. But it is you who is foolish. You are the fool. You understand? So in Genesis chapter 6, it says, and it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them. So we need to understand here that the Bible is written in masculine terms, in masculine form. So when it says men began to multiply, it's talking about men and women, because we need women to have sex with so that we can have daughters and sons. So a lot of the camps are very small-minded. They think they are so sharp They think they know so many things. The churches, even also the Christian churches, wouldn't dare attack this subject. And the Muslims won't even go near this subject. And I've already explained to you, all of you, why you won't, because your frequency is low. And that's because our teachers, our forefathers in the past thought that the only reason why we kept going into captivity after captivity, slavery after slavery, is because we could not keep the law of Moses. That is false. The law of Moses was never meant to be kept because it could never be kept. It wasn't supposed to be kept. It was a stem law. And I explained this to you all a few messages ago. I can't go to that now because that's not what this evening's message is about. And I don't want to cause confusion, and I don't want to make this message any longer than what it has to be. But if you all remember, the law of Moses, the true law of Moses, Moses took it and he broke it, or the true law, shall I say. Moses took it and he broke it when he came down to the mountain and saw the forefathers of us niggas worshiping a golden calf. So a stem law in place of the spiritual law, a stem law was given to us, a law that had no honor. So you saying God would give us a law with no honor? He did. He gave us a law. Let's not get it twisted. It was a righteous law. Altogether, it is perfect. Everything about the law of Moses is perfect. But we aren't perfect. I've told you niggas 753,984,461 times that an ordinary human being, unless they are Christ, no man can stand against the law of Moses. It has never happened, and it will never happen. The only man, ironically, that was able to stand against the law of Moses and not sin, not break one sin in the law of Moses, ironically, was Yahusha HaMashiach. That's because he wasn't an ordinary man. Only God can follow the law of Moses to perfection. You understand that? The reason why we kept going in and out, even to this day, the reason why the Negro has constantly been in and out of slavery is because of our disbelief. Because we do not believe the things that the scriptures have told us. If we had remembered the miracles of our Elohim, if we had remembered the splitting of the sea, if we had remembered him bringing the great deluge or the great flood, if we had remembered the angel of the death angel, messenger Yahuwah, standing over Israel with a sword in his hand after he already killed 70,000 niggas. If our ancestors who saw that angel with a sword in his hand, ready to rock everybody in Jerusalem, if our forefathers had took that message and passed that message down from generation to generation, Yahuwah is the law. He is the whole law and the only law. He is the law of laws. There can be no foundation other than Christ. That's a scripture. No foundation can be made other than Christ. The law of Moses is not the foundation. Christ is the foundation of our belief, and he is the foundation of the law. The reason why so many people are carnally minded and naturally minded and low frequency. If you go and you talk to somebody about an angel, they'll look at you like you're stupid and walk away from you. But let somebody come and talk to one of you dumb niggas about Little Uzi Vert or Jay-Z or P. Diddy. Let somebody come and talk to one of you niggas about Allah, a moon god. Let somebody come talk to one of you niggas about this rap song and that rap song. Let somebody come and talk to one of you niggas about Louis Vuitton, about Christian Dior. Let somebody come talk to one of you niggas about a Gucci belt and the latest Jordans. Then you have all ears. Let somebody come talk to you about the Philadelphia Eagles, Devin Haney. And I like sports, but I'm just saying, these are all carnal, low frequency, and natural things. But if somebody come talk to one of you niggas about the devil, if somebody come talk to you niggas about uh um about anything about the Most High coming back and trashing the earth, something like that. Anybody talk to you and tell you that that Joseph was not the biological father of God in the flesh. I try not to use that word God. I understand all of you know him as God. But if you watch my last message, you know that Christ, God, is not the name of the Father. It's not the name of Yahuwah. It's not the name of Christ. It's not the name of our Most High. Okay? I just told you who God was in my last message. But I'm going to slip up. We all slip up. Why do we slip up? Because they have brainwashed us for thousands and thousands, hundreds and hundreds of years. They've taken the real names of our Most High out of the scriptures and they've put false names in. The Lord means they all, which is Satan. God is the name of Satan. You understand this? They've taken out the true name of our Most High and flooded it with the name of the devil. Okay? Now, I want you all to understand something here. It says, and it came to pass, when the men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them. So the men was mankind. So let me reread that again, and let me insert mankind. And it came to pass, when mankind began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them. So the first scripture, the first verse lets you know that human beings were having sex all over the place. And it says that, and daughters were born to them. But we know that sons were born also. But the reason why they said daughters, because it's going to set us up for the next few scriptures. Verse 2, Genesis chapter 6, verse 2, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful. Now, let's stop there for a minute. We know that the sons of God are not ordinary men. Okay? We know either they're not ordinary men or we're talking about a different species. Because it's saying here, and the sons of Elohim. The sons of Elohim saw the daughters of men. Do y'all understand that? I don't want to make this hard. I know many people see, and y'all get angry with me. The people in the circumcision, you hate me. A lot of you hate me. And y'all supposed to love me. You know why y'all hate me? Because you all have a very low understanding. Because if you didn't, I wouldn't have to tell you all this over and over again. I'm not concerned with your feelings right now. So we need to understand that it says, so we already know from verse 1 that mankind was sucking and effing, and they were having children. We're clear. We're clear from verse 1. We don't want to make verse 1 any more complicated. Like IUIC has made this chapter. IUIC has taken this chapter and trashed this chapter. The coward Nat of IUIC, he has taken this chapter from Genesis and trashed it. And thus, he has not understood the reason why us as a people have been banished from Jerusalem, because it has nothing to do with the law of Moses. When people say, well, we went into captivity because we didn't keep the commandments. We didn't keep the commandments because we didn't believe. What didn't we believe? We didn't believe in the miracles of our Most High. We didn't believe that he was the one that split the Red Sea. We didn't believe that he was the reason why water came out of the rock. We didn't believe that he was the one that brought the flood. Still to this day, you have people that is trying to say that Yahuwah wasn't the one that split the Red Sea. That is just stupidity. That is dumb shit. And I have to call it how it is. You have people who won't even come anywhere close to comprehending what I'm saying tonight. And if you can, there are a lot of people who look at what I'm saying tonight as corny, as cornball shit. It's not cool. If you are still trying to be cool in today's society, you a whole clown. You a clown if you keep trying to be cool. How could you be yourself? How could you be outspoken? How could you be your own person if you still trying to be cool? You are a clown if you're still trying to be cool. And the cool people look at people like myself, and you say, well, he's a clown. I'm far less of a clown than you are. Far less of a clown than you are. All you care about is likes and praises from people. If all you care about is likes and praises from people, and all you can do is constantly promote your brand, because let's be careful and understand that your brand is yourself. There's so many of you people on the internet who are your lames, cornballs, and clowns, and you keep trying to promote your brand. Don't forget that you are your brand. You are your brand. Don't forget that. Some of you will never make it because you keep trying to promote yourself, and you are a clown. Don't you understand that? You are a clown, many of you on the internet. Clowns. Not all of y'all, but a lot of y'all. You see how all these how many of you of these entertainers are clowning themselves lately? And there's more and more shit going to come out about a lot of these entertainers. Some of them right now are going under the radar. But you got a lot more of these entertainers that grab their ankles and suck dick. And moreover, not only that, they've sacrificed as well. Some of you have, instead of going the faggot way, you've sacrificed, thinking that that's cooler than that. Both will bring great judgment to you. All of you out there, you think you're cool. You're constantly worried about how people view you. You are the ultimate clown, and you can never be authentic. You can never be authentic because you live for the praises of people. You understand that? You understand that? So let's get back to the word of God, right? But do understand, there are Bible teachers that are like this too. Don't you understand? In order to preach the word of Christ, you can't concern yourself about being cool. It says, so now mankind is multiplying on the earth, right? Mankind is multiplying, right? Now, the sons of Elohim now saw the daughters of men. So we got two separate species that we're talking about here. Two different kinds of men and two different kinds of folk here. Okay? The sons of Elohim saw that the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them as wives of all which they chose. So you dumbass camps out there, because it's more than just IUIC. You stupid dumbass camps. Tell me, what part aren't you understanding here? What part don't you get, you dumbass camps? What don't you get right here? Huh? Where did you get lost? What part don't you understand? Huh? So now, they saw that the women of mankind were beautiful, and they took them as wives, all which they chose. Okay? So now we're going to go to verse 3 here. And Yahuwah said, my spirit, the Most High said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. So Yahuwah obviously had a problem with this. Yahuwah had a problem with this, right? So all of a sudden he's going to say, my spirit is only going to be with mankind at this point for about 120 years or so. Okay? Now that's give or take, right? And then we're going to go to verse 4. And it says, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of Elohim came in unto the daughters of men. So don't you see the contrast here? Don't you see the contrast here? Right? See, many of you all think that these leaders are innocent. I'm going to tell you something. They're not innocent. They don't care about the souls of the people. They're not doing as much as a service as they're doing a disservice by lying. Okay? Now, lately, they've been staying away from these subjects because they know they speak falsehood. It's not just the camps. The churches won't attack these things as well, the Christian churches. You all stay away from these things. Okay, now the Christian church does understand faith a lot more than a lot of the camps, and they understand it more than a lot of Muslims. And they certainly understand it more than a lot of Old Testament only people. Old Testament only people, you all are the worst. I'm not even going to include you in this tonight because you are among the foolish of the lowest form, those who only believe in the Old Testament. You are some real foolish people. Okay? I don't care. Tonight, I'm just going to let y'all have it because it is what it is. Because at this point in time, a lot of you are misleading other people. Okay? You're misleading other people. So now, there were giants, in verse 4 it says, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that. So after that, meaning also after the flood. So there were giants before the flood because he brought the flood to destroy the giants. And the Bible here is letting you know that there were giants before the flood and there were giants after the flood. When the sons of Elohim impregnated the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, and which were of old, men of renown. So my question is, why is, if this was just mankind reproducing, then why is this now being a big subject? This is a big subject all of a sudden. You understand this? This is a big subject all of a sudden. Okay? Because then when you go to verse 5, it says, and Elohim saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. So after something like this happened, okay, it corrupted a lot of things. Okay? So now I want you to listen. What's taking place here is a disaster. Okay? There is a disaster taking place here. Mankind having sex and multiplying, that's not a disaster. Ordinary human beings having sex and having children is not a disaster. So how do we know that this is a disaster? How do we know that what is happening is something on a very, very, very great scale? It's chaos. It's utter, what's the word? I'm trying to find like it's the highest magnitude of destruction that's going on here. Okay? There is something very wicked taking place on earth right now. How wicked? Let's go to verse 7 and let's see how wicked this is. It's so wicked that Yahuwah said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth. But not just mankind. He said, I will destroy both man and beast and creeping thing, insect, and the fowls of the air and the birds. For it repenteth me that I have made them. So not only did he have to destroy man, but he had to destroy the lions and the tigers, and he had to destroy the creeping thing, and he had to destroy all the fowls of the air. I wonder why they had to go too. I wonder why the lions and the tigers and the horses, I wonder why they had to be destroyed along with mankind. Why did the vultures and the eagles, why did they have to die too? And the creeping thing, which probably he's referring to the insects or right? But all the animals had to go along with our forefathers. So what is going on where Christ says that he has to send such a deluge? Because as we all know, as I've told you all on many occasions before, this wasn't an average flood. This wasn't just Yah taking the ocean and tilting the ocean onto the planet. This was something different. And I'm not going to get into that because I've explained to you the flood before. Many of you that have watched, you already know what happened during the flood. Some of you don't know, maybe I'll go over it again. But as of right now, there's something so massive, so destructive, so evil. There's something happening so wicked that he has to bring some type of stop and some type of end to this. Now, the book of the giants, I got to get that book because the online doesn't tell you enough. That's because they want to sell the book. Okay? And so now it's going to say, but Noah found grace in the eyes of Yahuwah. So Noah found grace in the eyes of Yahuwah during all of this commotion. Okay? So much grace that he told Noah that these are the animals. I want you to build an ark, take your wife. You have 3 sons. Take your 3 sons and their 3 wives. Only you and your family of all the people in the world. I want on this ark, and I want you to go and take 2, a male and a female, of all the animals of their kind, and bring them onto the ark, because I'm about to trash this place. I'm about to trash this place. 120 years, I want you to preach to the people while you build the ark. Tell them niggas that something called rain is coming. Tell them this here, a lot of people thought that the gospel happened first in the New Testament. This was the gospel of the Old Testament. When Christ gave a grace period for 120 years while Noah built the ark to tell the forefathers of mankind that I'm going to trash this place if you don't listen. But the Most High knew that the people wouldn't listen because the people were corrupt and the people were wicked. Okay? So now, for a lot of people, Genesis chapter 6 is not enough. I want to go to Hebrews chapter 5. I'm going to go to Hebrews chapter 5. Hebrews chapter 5. I'm going to get into detail in part 2, but I just want to explain why many of you have the problem with believing this. I want to go to Hebrews chapter 5. I want to go to Hebrews chapter 5. Hebrews chapter 5, and I want to read the whole chapter. Hebrews chapter 5, and I want to read the entire chapter. And I'm going to be quick. I'm not going to keep going back. So I want y'all to pay very close attention. Hebrews chapter 5. For every high priest taken from among men is ordained for men in things pertaining to Elohim, that he may offer both gifts and sacrifices for sins. So I'm going to explain this, but I don't want to spend too much time on this. So I want you Negroes to understand something very, very important. If I was your priest today, if I was your priest, all of you Negroes would be doomed. You know why? Because I'm an imperfect piece of SHIT. And a nation of people has always been only as good as its priests. I need you all to understand that. The reason why the nation of Israel always had a priest is because the priest is a scapegoat. When the nation of Israel used to sin in the Old Testament, the priests would have to give an offering for the nation, meaning a bull or a calf. He would have to take a bullock or a sheep or a calf or something to the altar, and he would have to cut the neck of the bullock and that it bleed upon the altar so that it may be a sacrifice, or so shall I say, so it may be an offering to the Most High. That's what a priest used to have to do in the Old Testament when us niggas sinned. And then after he did an offering up for the nation or for the people, he would then have to do an offering up separately for himself. So he had to kill an animal, offer an animal up for you niggas, and then he had to offer an animal up for himself, because that was the requirement of Yahuwah Elohim, that we would not be, so he wouldn't have to destroy us as a people. So what Paul here is explaining, he's letting you know that from every high priest taken from among men, the high priest is taken from among men. And if anyone is a little skillful in the Bible, you all understand that the high priest had to be from the tribe of Levi. He had to be a Levite. So when this high priest is taken from among men and ordained for men, so he was taken from among men and then he was ordained for men in things pertaining to Elohim, that he may offer up both gifts and sacrifices for the sins of the people. Verse 2, who can have compassion on the ignorant? So this priest has to have compassion on the ignorant. Now I'm listen, I know I need more discipline. I'm going to call upon myself and say that I definitely need more discipline and I need more patience with people's understanding. But the problem is somebody gets frustrated when they got to say things over and over and over again. Like I'm talking to adults. You understand this? Because I've never lied to you all. So when you have somebody in front of you that's never lied, you come to think at some point, well, let me just listen to him. Then if I don't want to listen to him, then just don't listen to me at all. But if you're going to hear me out, you have to understand that I have a very, very steadfast, reliable, and trustworthy track record. None of you watching me now can ever say that I've lied to any of you all. You can't say I don't have honor. You can't say any of these things. You can hate me for whatever wicked, evil reason you want to hate me, but you can't say that I'm a liar, and you can't say that I don't know what I'm talking about. I have a strong track record with you niggas, so I don't want to have to keep saying it over and over and over again. I'm sorry. I know I can be a piece of shit sometimes, and some of the times the things I can say, I know I can be condescending, but some of you deserve to hear it, and you deserve you're in a position where you need to understand that you're on a very low frequency, and it's not completely your fault. It's not completely your fault. So this priest has to have compassion on the ignorant, and I need to work on that. I need to have more compassion on the ignorant and on them that are out of the way. So for those out of the way, meaning those of you in religion, you're not following the way of Yahuwah. You're not walking in the way. You understand? And he says, for that he himself also is compassed with infirmity. So understand that, of course, the priest is not perfect. You understand this? And by reason hereof, he ought as for the people. So this priest ought as for the people, so also for himself, to offer for sins. And no man taketh this honor unto himself, but he that is called of Elohim, as was Aaron. So Aaron was Moses' brother, and Aaron was the priest. But even our first priest, when we were a nation, when we became a nation of people, Aaron, do any of you Negroes remember what Aaron did? Remember, Aaron is Moses' brother. Moses was the prophet, and Aaron was the priest. Okay? Moses and Aaron were of the tribe of Levi. They were Levites. Moses went up to the mountain to talk to Elohim. He went up to the mountain to talk to Christ. He left Aaron down there to watch the people. Many people say, I am not as stupid as Aaron. I'm not as dumb as Aaron. I will not make the same mistakes as Aaron. What was the mistake that Aaron made? I've read it to you Negroes about 1,000 times. The people said, where is this Moses character that brought us out of Egypt? We are getting weary about him. He's taking too long to come back. So because Moses was taking too long to come back, our forefathers, the forefathers of us Negroes, complained and complained and complained to Aaron the priest and said, Aaron, they were uproar with Aaron, meaning a lot of people don't know how to read the Bible. People look at it, they were just asking Aaron to make us gods, Aaron. Aaron, please make us gods. Now, you got to understand, that's not what was going on, because you know how niggas are. See, everybody thinks that they were just asking Aaron to make gods. They weren't asking Aaron, they were threatening him. They said, Aaron, where is Moses? So what pedestal did us Negroes put Moses on where he was taking too long? So we had to tell Aaron, we threatened Aaron and made Aaron make us gods. Aaron said, we was about to rip Aaron limb to limb. Our forefathers was about to put hands and feet on Aaron. And that's why Aaron said, okay, give me your earrings. Give me all the gold that you have. And the people gave the gold to Aaron, and Aaron built the people an altar of gold in the shape and the form of a bull. Now, that's a whole different lesson by itself, why it was the shape of a bull. It wasn't just a thought from out of nowhere, but that's a different lesson. So the people worshiped Moses, and they didn't even know it. Just like you got a lot of you Negroes going to the stage and looking up at the stage and watching these performers. And how many of you all went to a Jay-Z concert and put up his little symbol and said, "Hova, Hova, Hova"? You are chanting to a man that bleeds blood and breathes air just like you do. And you're calling him Jehovah. And you just down there in a trance. Hova, Hova, Hova. That is pathetic. But many of you say, I would not do like as my forefathers have done. That's what you say to him. That's what you say within your heart. I am not as foolish as my forefathers were. Right? So now you got to understand something. So Paul is that bull, because Paul is letting you know here, right? Paul is saying, listen, just like Aaron, right? So he's talking about priesthood, right? And then Paul is going to say, he said, as was Aaron, and he mentioned Aaron for a reason. Now, let's keep going, because Paul in verse 5, we're in Hebrews chapter 5. And now we're going to verse 5. And then Paul is going to say, so also Christ glorified. So he says, okay, as was Aaron, because Aaron was the beginning of the priesthood. So when he said Aaron, he's not just talking about only Aaron. He's talking about all the priests of the Levitical priesthood, all the way up until when the priesthood stopped. When did the priesthood stop? The priesthood stopped when it actually stopped before Christ stepped on the scene. But it was solidified and ended when Christ stepped on the scene. It stopped before then, but I don't want to get into that right now. Okay? But for the most part, it was definitely put to death when Christ came on the scene. Why? Because there's only one man in the world that has ever held all three offices: king, prophet, and priest. The only man that has ever existed to hold all three offices was Christ. Politics, religion, and prophecy. Politics, king. Religion, which you all call religion, okay? He was a priest, but he also held the office of prophecy. Only Christ ever did it. So Paul is going to say, so as Christ glorified not himself, so Christ never glorified himself. He says, as Christ glorified not himself to be made a high priest, but he that said unto him, thou art my son, today I have begotten thee. He as he saith also in another place, thou art also a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. Now, I don't want to lose y'all here. Okay? I'm just thinking about something. My apologies. But I don't want to lose y'all with this one, okay? So I'm going to skip up because I don't want to lose y'all here. This is not about priesthood. I'm going to go down to verse 11, and then I'm going to explain everything. I'm going to go down to verse 11, and then I'm going to explain why I went here in the first place, okay? I'm going to explain this. Okay, so this is Hebrews chapter 5. I'm going to explain it. Hebrews chapter 5. I'm skipping to verse 11. Now, who is Paul talking to? Well, he's talking to some Negroes, right? I don't know what congregation he's talking to here, or this could be a letter after he crossed over, okay? But verse 11 says, of whom we have many things to say. So he's still talking about Christ. He said, okay, verse 10, he says, so he's talking about Christ. He says, called of Elohim, a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. And then verse 11 says, of whom we have many things to say and hard to be uttered, seeing ye are dull of hearing. So Paul is saying that you Negroes are dull of hearing. And then he's going to say, for when the same, he says, for when the time ye ought to be teachers. So some of you have been in this truth for a very long time. And Paul is saying, for the time ye ought to be teachers. So some of you Negroes should have been teachers by now. Ye have need that one teach you again, which be the first principles of the oracles of Elohim. I'm explaining this. And are become such as have need of milk and not of strong meat. Now, let me explain that so I can move on. So I'm not trying to switch from the Nephilim to a priesthood. Okay, the reason why I read this is because Paul's talking to some Negroes right here. And what they don't understand, right, is that the law, because, see, you got to understand, the law of Moses had a grip on our people. And we need to understand something, right? During this time, right, this was the Hellenistic time. And during this time, what you all need to understand is Rome was the power of the world. Rome was the superpower of the world. And Rome had Jerusalem under siege, meaning Rome had Jerusalem captive, meaning that Jerusalem, the state of Israel during this time, was under control by the Roman Empire. The reason why I'm telling you this is because during this time, our people, not only were we worshiping false gods back then, but we also were under the customs of the Romans. So if the Romans celebrated this, so did our people. If the Romans believed in Zeus, some of our people believed in Zeus. If the Romans had this type of custom, some of our peoples had that type of custom also. Just like today, in modern day Rome, Babylon, confusion, our people have different gods, our people have different factions, right? Our people are confused. Nothing has changed. Everything recycles itself. So just as today was happening back then. So what we need to understand is the law of Moses had a grip upon our people, but our people were still, they thought they followed the law of Moses because everybody had the Old Testament. The Romans allowed us, they allowed the Corinths, the Galatians, the different congregations within Rome. The Roman Empire, the Roman government was allowing our people to follow our Bibles. There were a group of people called the Sanhedrin that were walking around with the Bibles and the long robes, just like the camps do today, right? And they put all of these stipulations on the people, right? And they have not understood the real reason for a banishment. Even back then, 2,000 years ago, the Sanhedrin, the Pharisees, and the Sadducees didn't understand why we were in captive, why Rome had a grasp over Jerusalem. The only thing they would say is follow the commandments, follow the commandments. But that part of the law of Moses had failed us over and over and over again. And the law of Moses fails us today, and the law of Moses were failing our people back then. So, Paul here, I want you to understand, Paul here is trying to say that we are no longer under the Levitical priesthood. We now have a new priest, whom is Christ. Now, people are probably saying, well, look, Christ ain't here. Christ died. But listen, he also rose. He was resurrected, and many people in the town of Judea saw Christ. And he took a lot of the patriarchs of old to the Shamayim, to the heavens with him. Now, I know a lot of you don't believe that because too many of you are on too low of a frequency to believe that God, you all call him God, you are too low a frequency to believe that the Most High is capable of doing these things. Even though, so you're putting stipulations on the Most High. To put stipulations on the Most High, it is a stupid thing to do unless you don't believe. If you don't believe, then maybe it may not be so stupid because you don't believe. But if you believe in the Most High and you believe that the Most High is supposed to be omnipotent, meaning all powerful, then why would you disbelieve something that he has in his own scriptures that he said that he did? Why? What's the complication with that? He's omnipotent, right? Or do you not really believe it? Do you not really believe he exists? Okay, so because you don't believe something, you go and take up a false god. You go and take up foolishness because you don't believe the truth. Okay, so what Paul is saying is, listen, the law of Moses was never the reason why we got banished and why we're in captivity. What you need to understand is the law, since Christ stepped on the scene, the law has been transferred from the stone tablets back to heaven, meaning the law has been transferred from the stone tablets and it's been reestablished back to heaven. So now, Christ, who is in heaven at the time, and Christ now, who is in heaven, is our priest today. We no longer have a mortal man as a priest. Why? Because the priest here's the trick. Here's another trick of the law of Moses, the biggest trick of them all. The priest had to be perfect, meaning the priest had to be flawless. And we all know that there was no such thing as a flawless priest. So we were bound to fail in the Levitical priesthood. The reason why our people were constantly going back into slavery is because of our constant disbelief. And sure, it was because we broke the commandments, but we wasn't able to follow the commandments. We had to follow the commandments through faith. And when we follow the commandments through faith, we are given mercy. The only way that you can follow the commandments is through belief. And then you are to be given mercy because of your belief. You understand that? Are y'all understanding this? So many people are walking around trying to be perfect. Now, that does not mean be subject to sin. That does not mean to purposely, blatantly, without fear, go out here and be foolish. That does not mean you can do homosexual acts, especially if you're a man. That does not mean that you can sword fight, grab your ankles, and put your mouth on another man's penis. That does not mean you can do that and get away with it. That does not mean that you can sacrifice your mother, your son, your father, your daughter, your grandmother, your aunt, your close friends. That don't mean that you can sacrifice somebody and get away with it. That don't mean you can run on stage with a halter top and a purse and be a traitor toward your people and get away with it. That's not what it means. But it does mean this. When you come back, because Christ now is our priest, because he's our priest, now we can go back to Christ now, right? We can Walk away from those things. Go back to Christ. Now, a lot of the homosexual spirit is a different spirit. Okay? I actually do it. That's actually one of my messages. I got about 2 or 3 messages here that I'm going to do within the course of this 1 week. And I'm not saying it's impossible for a homosexual to repent, but I'm going to explain that it's a lot more complicated than a lot of you think it is, because many of them are vessels of destruction. They were never meant to repent. Okay? And I'll explain that, but that's not what tonight's message is about. So what we have here is Paul is trying to say, listen, y'all don't understand this. Y'all don't understand that Christ has to be our priest, because with a mortal, ordinary man as a priest, we're doomed. There's no way, according to the law of Moses, according to the law of Moses, which was not abolished. The Old Testament was not abolished. It was only given honor. That's in the Bible. Christ said, think not that I came to destroy the law of Moses, the prophets, and the writings. I did not. I came to uplift them, magnify them. I came to establish them. I came to give them honor, so that you can actually now, through your belief in Christ, who is everything. He's our king, he's our priest, and he's our prophet. Through belief in him, now you cannot go to hell now. It's a reality now. Because without Christ taking upon the priesthood after the order of Melchizedek, that's the reason why he appeared as Melchizedek then, because Melchizedek was immortal. Melchizedek was actually God in the flesh. Melchizedek was actually Christ. Melchizedek just means Prince of Peace. Christ is the Prince of Peace. Melchizedek and Christ was the same people. You understand what I'm saying? So I want to move on, and I want to get into something. So basically, what Paul is saying right here is, wait a minute. How you all out there that's watching this message, not all of y'all, because some of you are rookies. I'm talking to the people who have been in this truth for years and years and years, and you still don't believe. You're still talking about the fallen angels are not real. You're still talking about the Nephilims are not real. You're still talking about Joseph is Christ's biological father. Some of you have been in this truth for 20 years. 20 effing years. And you're still walking around here talking about Christ. Joseph is Christ's biological father. Some of you are Muslims. You've been Muslims for 15, 20, 30 years, and you still don't know who Christ is. When is it that you all are going to finally stop being babes? Now listen to what Paul says. He says, for when for the time ye ought to be teachers, ye have need that one teach you again the basic principles. So that means I got to keep going back to the law of Moses. We should have an understanding that the law of Moses have failed us. And once you understand this, everybody should be pressing in to the kingdom of heaven. Everybody should be pressing in to the belief in Yahusha, pressing into the trust of Yahusha HaMashiach. We should all understand these things by now, that the law has been transferred off of the stone tablets and has been reverted back to heaven. This is a spiritual thing now. This is not a carnal thing. You understand that? Don't y'all understand that? But the matrix has clouded your judgment. Right? The matrix has clouded your judgment. So now he says, since y'all need to go back to basic teachings, become, he says, and are become such as in need of milk and not for strong meat. He says, for everyone that useth milk is unskillful in the word of righteousness, for he is a babe. So many of you have been in this Bible for 15, 20 years. And I still need to feed y'all milk. Y'all can't eat meat because you're a babe. You don't have teeth. He says, but strong meat belongeth to them that are full or a full age. Is that talking about age? 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old? No, that's not talking about actual age in numbers, even though it's a twofold meaning, because the older you get, the more skillful you become. But I'm going to show you that you can be a scholar and still be a babe. So Paul says, even those whom by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. So you have to have your senses exercised to be able to discern good and evil. If you're standing at a Jay-Z concert and you're looking up at the stage, and then you look around and you see everybody doing this, calling him the name of the Most High, something should click in you and you should say, wait a minute, what's going on here? And walk out the arena. See, let's move on. Let's move on. Let's go to Numbers chapter 13. Let's go to Numbers chapter 13. So I want to go to Numbers chapter 13. I thought that was important that I got that off my chest, because I want you all to understand why you don't believe. And then in the second part, we're going to get into some really deep stuff, because a lot of you don't understand how I'm going to make some explanations for you all. Okay, let's go to Numbers chapter 13. Let's go to the law of Moses. I got to take you all back to the law of Moses. I cannot go to the apocalypse of Barak right now. Why? Because many of you are still drinking milk. I already know that a lot of you whom are beginners. I'm not mad at the beginners. I'm frustrated at those who've been in this word for years and years and years, and you're still having a problem with spiritual things. That's because you are carnally minded and you vibrate very low in your mind and in your state of consciousness. Okay? And the teachers, our teachers, have not helped, because our teachers do not understand the reasons why we kept being banished over and over and over again from Jerusalem. It is because spiritual things must be spiritually discerned. You understand this? This is not foolishness. Okay? Let's go to Numbers chapter 13. I want to go to Numbers chapter 13. Wait a minute. Yeah, Numbers chapter 13, and I want to go to 16 and 17. I want to first read 16 and 17. This is the law of Moses. I need to take you Negroes back to the basic principles of the law so you can understand. So let's go to the law of Moses. Numbers chapter 16 and 17. And let's read. These are the names of the men which Moses sent to spy out the land. And Moses called Oshea, the son of Nun, Jehoshua. So I'm not going to read the name. The names were already read. If you want to go back and read the names, you can read them. But while our forefathers were in the wilderness, it came to a point where we had finally, we saw afar off the land that was promised to us, and which was the land of Canaan. Then, during the time of Moses, it was called the land of Canaan. Today, that land is called Israel. It's called Jerusalem. So Israel, the state of Israel, once upon a time was called the land of Canaan. Now, before we were to go upon this land, Moses sent 12 spies. Musha sent 12 spies to go and spy out the land before we were to infiltrate and take out the inhabitants, because it was like an army mission. We were going to take out the inhabitants of the land and assume the land for ourselves, our forefathers, the children of Israel. So Moses wanted to send some people to go and see what it's hitting for before we go there and take it, right? It's just like modern warfare today. Send a drone over there, see what it's about, see what everything is hitting for, and see what we're dealing with, and to see who we have to take out. He sent, of course, they didn't have drones back then. So Moses sent 12 spies. And Moses, in verse 17, this is Numbers chapter 13, and we're in verse 17. And Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, and said unto them, get you up this way, southward, and go up into the mountain, and see the land, scour the land, what it is, see what it's about, and the people that dwelleth therein, see who's over there, whether they be strong or weak, or few or many. So Moses say, go, spy out the land. Tell us what it's about. Tell us what it hit for, whether they be strong or weak or few or many. Let's skip to verse 23. So they went and they did this, and they came back. Now, the 12 spies, it was 12 spies or it was 10 spies. I'm sorry if I got it wrong. It might have been 12. It might have been 10. Read the verse, read the chapter for yourself and find out. I might have made a mistake. I'm off about 2. So in any event, right, they came unto the brook of Eshol. Okay. Verse 25. This is Numbers chapter 16, Numbers chapter 13, verse 25. And they returned from searching the land after 40 days. So they had to travel over there. It took them 40 days. They also were there for like a few days spying out the land. So they were checking everything out. So after 40 days, they returned searching from the land. And they went and came to Moses and to Aaron and to all the congregation of the children of Israel, unto the wilderness of Paran, to Kadesh, and brought back word unto them, and unto all the congregation, and shewed them the fruit of the land. So they brought back some fruit of the land, some real fruit. And they told him and said, we came unto the land whither thou sentest us, and surely it floweth with milk and honey, and this is the fruit of it. Nevertheless, the people be strong that dwell in the land, and the cities are walled, and very great. And moreover, we saw the children of Anak there. So now, I want you to understand what's going on here. Okay? They brought Moses back a false report. The report that they brought back Moses was a lie. They said that they saw the children of Anak there. Anak is a remnant of the Nephilim. Anak was a remnant of the Nephilim. So I want to go okay. So now let's go down here to verse 30. So they come back and they bring a report to Moses and saying that the children of Anak is there. Now listen, let's go to verse 30. And Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it. So Caleb, by the way, he wasn't an Israelite, but we're not going to get into that tonight. But Caleb had faith. Caleb had faith. Now, these niggas came back and told Moses that the children of Anak was there. And Caleb said, I don't care. We can go and we can possess it. Why did Caleb say that? Because Caleb had belief. Caleb knew that Yahuwah was with them. You see that there? This had nothing to do with the law of Moses. Caleb knew that Yahuwah was with them. Right? Verse 31. Verse 31. But the men that went up with him said, we are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. Listen, verse 32. And they brought up an evil report of the land, which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, the land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants. Do you hear that? He said, it's a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof. And all the people that we saw in it are men of great stature. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers. And so we were in their sight. So now, I want y'all to understand something. These people that Moses sent to spy out the land, they said that the children of Anak, they lied. They weren't telling the truth. They were lying. They brought up a false report. Why? Because they were scared of war. Because they didn't believe that Yahuwah was with them. So they come back and they brought up a false lie. They brought up a false report. And they gave it to Moses and they said, listen, them ancestors of the giants of the Nephilim are there. And we were as the size of grasshoppers to these people. Now, if the giants didn't exist, why would they come to Moses and bring up a false report like this? Because they said, because the ancestors of Anak are there. So they knew of the stories. The stories from where? The stories from the book of Enoch. And there's another book called the Book of the Giants, which is a book that many of you have to get. But now that I'm mentioning it, it's probably going to go the price is probably going to skyrocket. So you need to understand that these books were taken out of Genesis. Why? We're going to get to that in a minute. We're going to get to why the book of Enoch was taken out of Genesis, why the book of the giants was taken out of Genesis because they don't want you niggas to believe in higher learning. The law of Moses, please, there is a higher law, a higher decree than the law of Moses. Do you understand what I'm telling y'all? There's a higher decree. Okay? So now we got to understand something. They said we were like grasshoppers to them. So is that unrealistic to many of you all? That's unrealistic? Okay. But how did they have sex with the women? That's what we want to know. How did they have sex with the women? Well, first of all, you all need to get a very thorough understanding of what happened. Let's keep moving. Let's keep moving. Let's now go to. Now, first, I want you to understand. Now, this lesson is, I don't got much to go, but there's some things that I want to read. First of all, I want y'all to understand something. Giant and Nephilim are not really interchangeable. And I explained this to you all before. Giant and Nephilim are not really interchangeable. Okay? What do I mean by that? That means they're not really the same thing. Okay? I'm going to explain what I'm talking about here. See, this is why you have to study to show yourself approved. Anybody would tell you that Nephilim means giant. It doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't mean giant. Nephilim means demigod. Nephilim really means, well, I Googled Nephilim and it says it means giant. To hell with Google. I'm telling you what Nephilim means. I'm telling you with the Spirit of God, with the Spirit of Christ. I'm telling you what Nephilim means. Now, it can, in the Bible, it's interchangeable. It's not necessarily wrong. But they're not actually the same thing. Nephilim means demigod. It means half fallen angel and half human. Okay? This is very important that you all understand this. All right? So now, I want to go to Jude chapter 6. Excuse me, I want to go to Jude 6. Jude only has one chapter. I want to go to Jude 6. For all you people out there who don't know how the fallen angels were able to impregnate first of all, I need to tell you something. It's not the giants that had sex with the women. Let me repeat. The giants didn't have sex with the women because that's impossible. Okay? Some of the giants were different sizes. Some of them really large. But we're going to get to that in a minute. So you can imagine the size of these giants' penises. First of all, we understand that the giants, they walked around naked. They didn't have clothes. Y'all understand that, right? But these giants weren't very intelligent. They weren't very intelligent. Why? It's just like you take a cat and splice it with a dog. Everything Christ made was perfect. If you all Google raccoon cat, and you will see that there are people that are splicing raccoons with cats. These cats have trouble walking. You know why they have trouble walking? They have trouble walking because they're imperfectly, they're an abomination. A cat is supposed to have sex with another cat. A dog is supposed to have sex with another dog. Now, you can imagine the penises on some of these Nephilims. So it would have been impossible for the Nephilim to have sex with a human woman. That's because it wasn't the Nephilims that had the sex with the women. It was the angels. Now, I need y'all to understand something extremely important. The Nephilim, the demigods, and the angels are two different things. If we go back to Genesis chapter 6, it says that the fallen angels, they came and they had sex with the women, and they bare children with them. And the children that came from the women became giants. So the giants weren't the ones that had sex with the women. The angels had sex with the women. And the children, the offspring of the angels and the women, they became giants. So why did they get so big? Well, we're going to get to all of that. I'm going to explain why they grew so big. But first, we need to figure out, how did the angels have sex with the women? Because the angels were the same size as their offspring. That's the reason why the offspring became giants. Well, how could the angels have had sex with the women if the angels were giants? Let's go to Jude, Jude, the book right before Revelations. Let's go to Jude, and let's go to verse 6. And Jude is going to speak about what happened during the time of Genesis. And Jude says something very interesting. Jude says, and the angels, or the messengers that kept, well, these angels weren't necessarily messengers. These angels were Gregory. They were watchers. These angels were specifically sent to keep an eye on mankind. In fact, if you go to the Marvel Comics, the Marvel Universe, in the Marvel Comics, they have a group of people with big heads called the Watchers. Where do you think they got them from? And what do the Watchers do? They spy on mankind. That's what they do. Where do you think that the Marvel Comics got that from? Everybody got everything from the Bible. But Jude is going to say something interesting. He's going to say, and the angels, or the Gregory, or the Watchers, which kept not their first estate. Let's stop right there. So, when I give you the second part to this message, you're going to see that there were people that were taken, one of the seven candlesticks took some people that were prophets through the heavens. And what you'll understand is that they saw people in these other heavens, angels in these other heavens, or shall I say beings in these other heavens, that were tall. Some of them tall as center city buildings. Well, why would these people in heaven be so tall? We're going to get to that too. But what Jude said was the angels, which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation. What was their habitation? Their habitation was heaven. See, not only did they leave their first estate, meaning they changed the size of their bodies. So why? Because they wanted to have sex with the children of women, with the women of men. Well, angels can't do that. Why can't they? Angels have powers, superpowers. That's where they get all these Marvel Comics and DC Comics people from. They get all of these people from angels. Angels originally are not made out of flesh and bone. They're not made out of flesh and bone. They can transform into flesh and bone. Well, how do you know that? I'll get to that in a minute. But if Christ can transform into flesh and bone, I don't even got to go there. Can Christ transform into flesh and bone? Of course he can. Not only can Christ, I read it to you all a couple messages ago. Not only can Christ transform into flesh and blood, but when he transforms into flesh and blood, he got a penis and he has a digestive tract. And when Abraham fed Christ and he fed the angels, then they drank and they ate. What do you think Christ and the two angels did before they went back to heaven? Well, first of all, their bellies got full and they sat back and they relaxed. The creator of the universe came to see Moses in the form of a man that bleeds blood and breathes air. He can transform himself into an ordinary human being, but he's still not quite ordinary. He still has everything under control because he is who he is. Why isn't this possible? Why isn't this possible for somebody who allegedly has no limit in power? Why would this be hard to do? Why? Why would this be complicated? Why would this be such a far-fetched thing for the creator of the universe? So not only does he have a digestive tract, but he can drink and he can eat, and so can the angels. So can the other angels. So you got to understand, these angels can manipulate matter. When you see these demon magicians, like one of them walked through an iron bar gate. One of the demon magicians walked through an iron bar gate. Did he really do it? He really did it. It wasn't a trick camera. No green screen and nothing like that. He literally did it. But did he do it on his own? No. Why? Because ordinary mankind is not capable of doing that. So you have to understand that a lot of these demon magicians, they're working with higher powers, and their just due is the lake of fire. But we need to understand here that the angels were able to have sex with the women because they left their first estate, meaning they transformed themselves, but left their own habitat, meaning they left heaven. He hath reserved, and he's also saying that he hath reserved them in everlasting chains under darkness until the judgment of the great day. So this is not talking about ordinary men, because if this was ordinary men, they would have been dead by now. So what chains did he put them in? Everlasting chains. So Christ had to put these angels, these fallen ones, he had to put them in everlasting chains. Why? Because they are not men. They're not ordinary men. You understand what I'm saying? So if you want to know how they had sex with the women, that's how. They left their natural estate, meaning they shrunk in size. Oh, man, this is deep. I can't believe that. I can't believe that. Nah, I mean, I'm with you, dog, but I can't believe all of that. Well, I'm warning you. This is more important than the law of Moses. This supersedes the law of Moses. The law of heaven supersedes the law of Moses. I'm warning y'all. This is the reason why you all have a problem with your belief. This is why. And Satan made sure he did everything he could. He took the book, because in the book of the giants, because there was a war going on, because Raphael, the angels Raphael and Michael, they had to put hands and feet on some of these angels. These Gregory that came down here and did that, Christ had to send Michael and Gabriel, but it says all that in the book of the giants. And I don't have that. Now, I do have some spurts of the book of the Giants where it does say that, but I didn't get into that because it's hard to read because they took a lot of it out. They tampered with the book of the Giants. Why? Because it's true. And what's going on in the book of the Giants is an actual war between one faction of heaven and another faction of heaven. They show you this in these superhero movies all the time. But you all are just looking at it like it's fiction. But these alleged superhero movies are based on real life past events that happened. Supernatural divine events that actually took place early in the beginning of this world, of this earth. Okay? So if you all want to know how the angels shrunk, that's how they did it. They left their natural state, and then they left their habitat, which was heaven. They came down and they took upon these women as they will. Okay? So now we're going to move on. We ain't got too much longer to go. I had to cut this in half so part 2 don't be forever. So now I want to go to John 6:32. I want to go to John chapter 6, verse 32. John chapter 6, verse 32. I'm going to tell you what's going on with y'all thinking. I'm going to tell y'all why y'all can't believe. John chapter 6, verse 32. John chapter 6, verse 32. Now, I want all of you out there to understand something. John chapter 6 is a very, 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 very powerful chapter. John chapter 6, if it's not the most powerful chapter in all of the Bible, it's one of the top 5. It's one of the top 5. A lot of 501c3 are not going to attack John chapter 6. Now, I'm not going to read the whole chapter, but I want to start off at verse 32. And Yahusha said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, Moses gave you not the bread from heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread from heaven. Now, I want y'all to understand something. This is a riddle. Christ is the Father. How do we know that Christ is the Father? Isaiah 9:6. Isaiah 9:6. Isaiah 9:6. Isaiah 9:6. Isaiah 9:6. We're going to make this very easy. None of you should have never gotten past Isaiah 9:6. There are a lot of you out there on the internet that preach the word. And many of you that used to have teachers, like all of you that attacked me earlier on in my career. The reason why none of you could get past Isaiah 9:6, because you were not prophets. You were falsehood and you didn't have the Spirit of Christ. Because if you have the Spirit of Christ, it's very simple. You're going to take Isaiah 9:6 for face value. A real prophet takes the Bible for face value unless it does not agree with the identity of Christ. A real prophet takes the Bible for face value unless there's something that does not agree with the true identity of Christ. A real prophet takes what's in the Bible for face value unless it's something that doesn't agree with the identity of Yahushua HaMashiach. I want to say that one last time. A real prophet takes what the Bible says for face value unless it doesn't agree with the identity of Yahushua HaMashiach and or unless he or she is misinterpreting the word. So in John chapter 6, Christ is talking to Negroes. He's talking to the disciples, whom are all Negroes. And he says to the disciples, verily, verily, I tell you, he might not be talking to the Negroes right here. He might not be talking to the disciples right here. But I don't feel like going back up. Research for yourself. But I know he's either talking to Negroes ordinarily, randomly, or he's talking to the disciples, one or the other. Or he may even be talking to the Pharisees. But in any event, he's talking to black people. And he says, truly, truly, I say unto you, Moses didn't give you niggas the bread from heaven. He says, but my Father giveth you the bread from heaven. He says, for the bread of Elohim is which cometh down from heaven and giveth life into the world. So he's saying that the bread, Moses didn't give the children of Israel the bread of heaven. There is a greater than Moses here, is what he's trying to explain to you all. Right? There's a greater than Moses here. All right? And he says, for the bread of Elohim is he which cometh down from heaven and giveth life into the world. So he says the true bread of heaven is he who cometh down from heaven. It's a metaphor. He says his Father gave us the bread of heaven. And then he goes and he flips and he says, the bread of heaven is he who cometh down from heaven and giveth life into the world. So Christ is referring to himself because Christ is the one that giveth life to the world. But I thought the Father gave life to the world. Then said they unto him, so whoever Christ is talking to, then said they unto him, Master, evermore give us this bread. So Christ says, listen, Moses didn't give y'all the bread. My Father gave y'all the bread from heaven. And the bread from heaven is the nigger that came down from heaven. That's the bread of heaven. It went right over their head. It went right over their head. And then they say, Master, give us the bread of heaven. You got to explain it over to them. Why? Because these disciples, or these people that Christ was speaking to, are just like many of you today. Spiritual things must be spiritually discerned. Some of you ought to have been teachers, but I must go back into the principal elementary orals of the book, of the word, in order to get you to understand, because you're carnal. You understand? And Yahushua said to them, God damn, like, are y'all not listening? I am the bread of life. He that cometh to me, chapter 6, John, chapter 6, verse 35. Christ says, I'm the bread of life. He that cometh to me shall never hunger, and he that believeth on me shall never thirst. He says, but I say unto you, that ye have seen me, and believe not. You all see me. You see me. but you still don't believe. You see this? He says, all that the Father giveth me shall come to me. Why would the Most High give everything to somebody and not have everything left? So are y'all catching the metaphor? Let me read it again. Christ says, absolutely everything that the Father giveth me. No, he's saying absolutely everything. All that the Father giveth me shall come to me. And him that cometh to me, I will in no wise cast out. So whoever turns over to Christ, whoever goes to Christ, he's saying he's not going to cast you out. He says, for I came down from heaven, not to do my own will, but the will of him that sent me. He said, and this is the Father's will. Now listen to the riddle. Listen to the riddle. Pay attention. I came down from heaven, not to do my own will, but the will of him that sent me. He says, and this is the Father's will, which hath sent me, that all which he hath giveth me, I should lose nothing, but should raise up, but I should raise it up at the last day. So Christ is going to be the one that's going to resurrect people at the last day. He says, and this is the will of him that sent me, that everyone which seeth the Son and believeth on him may have everlasting life, and I will raise him up on the last day. So Christ is the resurrection. Y'all didn't catch that riddle, did y'all? I can't stay here all night. Okay? I want to keep moving because I want to read something very, very important. The Jews then murmured. So he was talking to some niggas, right? He was talking to some niggas. And then they murmured. They said, oh, wait a minute. What's this guy talking about? The Jews then murmured at him because he said, I am the bread which came down from heaven. And they said, is this not Yahusha, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? Because they thought that Joseph was his father too. So they're downplaying him now. Ain't this nigga the carpenter from around the corner? We know his daddy and his mama. And they said, and Yahusha, verse 43, Yahusha therefore answered and said to them, murmur not among yourselves. Huh? Say that again? My phone's on the floor. It just dropped. Give me 1 minute. So I want you to hold that there for a minute. So they got a problem with what he's saying, right? But there's something I want to get point. Okay. It's going to be verse 52. Hold up. So now, this is the point that I'm trying to get at right here. I want y'all to pay very careful attention. This is the point that I'm trying to get at. Let's go to verse 52. The Jews therefore strove amongst themselves, saying, how can this man give us his flesh to eat? So I need to go back up so you're not lost. All right, so they was downplaying them, right? So verse 44, this is John 6, verse 44. So Christ says, no man can come to me except the Father which hath sent me draw him. Here's some more riddles. Pay attention. No man can come to me except the Father which hath sent me draw him. And I will raise him up at the last day. I will resurrect him at the last day. It is written in the prophets. It's written in the Old Testament. It's written in the prophets. It's written in the Old Testament. And they shall be taught of God. Every man, therefore, that hath heard and have learned of the Father cometh to me. Not that any man hath seen the Father, say, except he which is of Elohim. He hath seen the Father. I'm not explaining that right now. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me hath everlasting life. I am the bread of life. Your fathers did eat manna in the wilderness and are dead. So he's talking about back during the time of Moses, when they dropped, when Yah sent manna from out of the sky, right? He was saying, your forefathers, them niggas that was with Moses, they are dead. They ate manna in the wilderness and they are dead. This is the bread which cometh down from heaven, that a man may eat thereof and not die. I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If any man eat of this bread, so Christ says, I am the living bread that came down from heaven. If any man eat of this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread that I will give is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world. So after he said that, the Jews strove among them, saying, how can this man give us his flesh to eat? The point I'm trying to make is this. The reason why you Negroes, you can't believe in the Nephilim, you can't believe in the giants, you can't believe that Joseph is not Christ's biological father. Some of you can't believe in the flood. Some of you can't believe in the spiritual things that have taken place in the Bible. The same, just like your ancestors. When they said, how can he give us his flesh to eat? Christ was not talking about cannibalism. He was not talking about literally taking his body and feeding it to people. This is spiritual. He's saying that if you come to me, he's saying that, okay, because they understand that the manna that was given during the time of Moses, literally that was food for the people in the wilderness to eat. But Christ is not talking about carnal food. Christ is not talking about a loaf of bread. Christ is not talking about a steak sandwich. Christ is talking about eternal life. See, spiritual things must be spiritually discerned. This is how many of you think today. Christ wasn't talking about cannibalism. He wasn't talking about peeling off a piece of flesh of his arm or his body or his leg and giving it to niggas. That's not what he was saying. He was saying, I am the true bread. He's speaking spiritually. He said, come to me and you'll live forever. That's what he's trying to say. Let's go to Enoch chapter 6. Let's go to Enoch chapter 6. Let's go to Enoch. Let's go to the scroll of Enoch, and let's go to chapter 6. We only got 3 more scriptures to go. 3 more scriptures to go. That's it. We only got 3 more scriptures to go. Let's go to Enoch chapter 6. Let's go to Enoch chapter 6. This is the book of Enoch, chapter 6. And it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied in those days, and multiplied in those days, and were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. See that? It's saying the same thing that Genesis 6 is saying. And it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied in those days, were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters, and the angels, the children of heaven, and the angels, or the Gregory, the children of heaven. It says, the children of heaven saw and lusted after them. So the children of heaven saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. And Samjaza, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear ye will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. And they all answered him and said, let us all swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations, not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. Then swear they all together and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon them. And they were in all 200 who descended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon. And they called it Mount Hermon, because they had sworn and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And these are the names of their leaders. So then it goes to naming the names of the leaders of the fallen angels. And if you go ahead and you look at some of their names end with E-L, L. That's because they were the sons of Emmanuel. They were the sons of the Most High. Okay? So they came down and landed on the mountain. They left their habitat and they landed on a mountain. And it was 200 of them. And they said, let us go down there and take wives of the children of men. And they all made an oath to stand on their agreement and to stand on what they was about to do. So you got to give them credit. They stand up. Okay? Now, let's go to verse 7. Let's go to Enoch, and let's go to chapter 7. Enoch, chapter 7. This is very short, just like chapter 6 was very short. And I'm going to Enoch chapter 15 after this, and then we're finished. Let's go to Enoch, chapter 7. I just read chapter 6, and now I'm going to read chapter 7. And I want y'all to pay attention. And all the others together with them took upon themselves wives, and each chose for himself one. And they began to go in unto them, and to defile themselves with them. With who? With the women. So it was the angels who were defiling themselves. They weren't defiling the women. They were defiling themselves by having sex with the women. And I'm going to prove that to you. And they taught them charms and enchantments and the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. And they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells. So that's like 450 feet tall. That's the size of some of these buildings that you see in Center City. That's almost a skyscraper. Y'all don't believe that, do y'all? Remember when the guy in Numbers that brought back the evil report to Moses? He knew, he read this scripture. That's the reason why he said that I was like a grasshopper unto them. Because he read the scripture. Because he knew how tall they were. We're talking about 300 cubits, over 450 feet tall. Not all of them were that big. Some of them were smaller. Some of them was only as tall as about 15 to 20 feet. They all ranged in different sizes. But some of the greater ones, those whom were of greater angels, stood as much as 450 feet. They were humongous. Okay? And then it says here, whose height was 3,000 ells, who consumed all the acquisitions of men. They ate the men, they ate the people. And when men could no longer sustain them, when the men could no longer, it says they consumed all the acquisitions of men. So the men were feeding them. Ordinary men were feeding them. So these giants were taking control of things because they couldn't be defeated. And they consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when mankind could no longer sustain them, when they no longer could give them the food, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. And they began to sin against the birds, the beasts, and the reptiles, and the fish. So you have to understand that these angels, they didn't just defile themselves with the women. They also defiled themselves with the birds, with the beasts, with the fish. So this is where we get and the reptiles. If many of you want to know where dinosaurs came from, this is where the dinosaurs came from. Dinosaurs were a creation of the fallen angels. They were offspring of fallen angels mating with the reptiles. They defiled themselves also with the reptiles and the beasts and the fish and the fowls of the air. This is why Christ had to destroy everything. If you want to know the purpose of the flood, the reason why the Most High brought the flood, because this was a catastrophe on the planet. Nothing that you can see before. And times like this are going to return, because in these last days, he says, will be as the time of Noah. Now, but only in a different way. We're talking about terminators and all of these things are going to come about, right? Not in the exact same way, but they're already splicing genes. One of the first things Obama did when he came back into office was he wanted to open and begin back, start back with the stem cell research. Stem cell research is dangerous. They're doing something crazy in these underground bunkers, in these underground laboratories, with splicing genes and this, that, and the third. There are things that exist beneath this, in these underground hideaways, government facilities, that none of you would believe your eyes if you saw. Because things will be as the day of Noah. This type of crazy shit is going to return, but in a different way. But it's going to return. Listen, I want to finish this. I want to go to Enoch chapter 15. And I want to finish this. I want to go to Enoch chapter 15, and I want to finish this. Now listen, I'm going to sit back for this one. We're done after this. I want everybody to pay very close attention to what I'm about to say to you. This is a very short chapter. This is the reason why they took the scroll of Enoch out of the Bible. This is the reason why they took the book of Enoch from out of the Bible. For this reason right here. This is the scroll of Enoch, chapter 15. And he answered and said to me, and I heard his voice. This is Enoch talking. Enoch is talking about Christ. Enoch says, I heard his voice. And what did Christ say to Enoch? He says, fear not, Enoch, thou righteous man and scribe of righteousness. He says, approach hither and hear my voice. He says, and go say to the Gregory, go say to the watchers, go say to the fallen angels, the fallen angels of heaven, to the watchers of heaven, who have sent you to intercede for them. He said, tell them you should intercede for men, for mankind, and not men for you. So Christ is telling Enoch, because at this point, the watchers have been apprehended because there's a war going on, right? And the watchers have been apprehended, and many of them have been thrown down into everlasting chains, just like I read in the scroll of Jude, in the book of Jude, where Jude said that the angels that left not their natural estate and left their habitat, right? Christ took the majority of them, and in fact, he took all of the Gregory, because Satan was not a part of the Gregory. Satan had already fell. Satan had fell before them. They learned how to defile themselves with women. They got that from Satan, because Satan did it first with Eve. So Christ says, Enoch, the watchers have sent you to plead for them, to plead for mercy. Christ says, go back and tell them that they not ought to send you to plead for them, but they ought to have pleaded for mankind, because that's what their job was. Christ says, wherefore, he says, wherefore you have left the high, holy, and eternal mountain. So Christ is telling Enoch to say this to them. You have left, because didn't the book of Jude say that they left their habitat? So Christ right here is this is agreeing with the book of Jude. And Jude, he read the book of Enoch. That's how he knew what he was talking about. And Jude said, and Christ said, he said, tell them this, that they left the high, holy, and eternal heaven and have lain with women and defiled yourselves with the daughter of men and taken to yourselves wives and done like the children of earth. So these angels, Christ said, you have done like the children of earth. And then he says, and begotten Nephilim as your sons. And though ye were holy, spiritual. So you, before you defiled yourselves with flesh and blood, before you went and defiled yourselves by having sex, he said you were set apart, you were sanctified, you were holy, spiritual, living an eternal life. You have defiled yourselves with the blood of women and have begotten children with the blood of flesh. He says, and as the children of men have lusted after flesh and blood, and those also who die and perish, so as mankind lusteth after flesh and blood, and we die. Eventually we die and we perish. He says, therefore have I given them wives, also that they might impregnate them and beget children by them, that thus nothing might be wanted them on earth. So Christ said, listen, because mankind eventually expires now because of the sins of Adam and Eve, he says, because mankind expires, I've given them wives so that they can procreate and continue to live. But you were formed, he says, but tell the watchers, he says, but you were formerly spiritual, living the eternal life. You were formerly spiritual, living eternal life, and immortal for all generations of the world. And therefore, I have not appointed, you didn't need wives. You didn't need to go down there and have offspring. He says, and I appointed wives for you. For as for the spiritual ones of the heaven, in heaven is their dwelling. And now the giants who are produced from the spirits and flesh, the giants are the offspring of the fallen angels. For a lot of you camps that don't understand that, the giants are the offspring. The Nephilim, the demigods, are the offspring of the fallen ones. They are not the same as the fallen ones. And I'm going to tell you what else is not the same. I want you to pay attention. He says, for as the spiritual ones of heaven, and heaven is your dwelling place. And now the giants who are produced from the spirits and flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth. And on the earth shall there be dwelling. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies, because they are born from men and from the holy watchers is their beginning and primal origin. They shall be evil spirits on the earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. As for the spirits of heaven, in heaven shall be their dwelling place. But as for the spirits of the earth, which were born upon the earth, on the earth shall be their dwelling. And the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, and do battle, and work destruction on the earth, and cause trouble. They take no food, but nevertheless hunger, and thirst, and cause offenses. And these spirits shall rise up against the children of men, and against the women, because they have proceeded from them. So I'm going to tell you what's happening right here. We're done. I'm going to tell you what's happening right here. I really would like to go to John 3 after this. John 3 after this. But I'm going to tell you what happened first. First, I'm going to set John 3. John 3, just so y'all can remember the reason why y'all don't understand things. But let me tell you what's happening here. So Christ is telling Enoch to go back and tell the fallen angels, don't send you to try to plead for their guilt. I appointed them to overlook mankind, and they should be the ones that was divinely intervening with mankind and telling mankind not to sin. They were eternal beings, and what they did was a very great sin. They defiled themselves with the blood of women. They left their natural estate, they shrunk, and they left their habitat, which was heaven, and they came down, and they all came to one agreement on Mount Hermon that they was going to take some pussy. That's what happened. They all came to the agreement on the mountain that they was going to come down and they was going to take some ass. And that's what they did. And the women had these babies, but the babies grew and grew and grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. Why? Because the fallen angels originally are much larger than we are down here on this planet. So each child grew to the capacity of his father, but they were all different sizes. Some yay big, some extremely big. And Christ is saying, I'm going to bring this flood and I'm going to destroy everything. Because what has happened was a great sin, and the DNA has been corrupted. And whenever the DNA is corrupted, that's when Christ returns. So I'm warning y'all. You got what they doing in these underground bunkers and these underground facilities. When these terminators and all of that, when they start splicing and they start the singularity and they start all of this stuff, when the DNA begins to become corrupted again, when there's just a few niggas left on this planet, Christ is not going to let us all die. He never did. When the DNA gets corrupted, God is going to return. And you have to understand that when he brought the flood and he wiped out the giants, remember, the giants are the offspring of the fallen angels. And when he brought the flood, he wiped out the demigods. He wiped out the Nephilim. But when they were destroyed, the spirits that proceeded from them are the demons that we're dealing with today. The demons, the devils that we deal with today are the offspring or are the spirits of the offspring of the fallen. You understand me? They are the spirits of the offspring of the fallen. Depending upon what a demon looks like is going to depend upon whether or not the fallen angel had sex with a human. If the fallen angel had sex with a human, the demon is going to look like a human. If the fallen angel had sex with a reptile, the demon is going to look like a reptile. If the fallen angel had sex with a beast, then the demon is going to look like whatever the beast is that the fallen angel mated with, because they didn't just defile themselves with women, ordinary women, mankind, but they also defiled themselves with the beast, the fish of the sea, the fowls of the air, and the reptiles. That's where the dinosaurs came from. The dinosaurs didn't just come out of nowhere. They existed because of what happened and what took place during this time right here. The reason why the dinosaurs were destroyed was not by a comet. NASA has lied. Science has lied to you. A comet didn't destroy the dinosaurs. The flood did. The flood destroyed the dinosaurs. The flood destroyed all the abominations that the fallen ones have created through their DNA by corrupting the DNA. If we go to John chapter 3, and this is it right here. This is John chapter 3. There was a man of the Pharisees named Nicodemus, a ruler of the Jews. So Nicodemus was a Pharisee. The same came to Christ by night, and he said unto him, Rabbi, Master, we know that thou art a teacher come from Elohim. For no man can do these miracles that thou doest, except Elohim be with him. Yahusha answered and said to him, Verily I say unto thee, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. Nicodemus say unto him, How can a man be born again when he is old? Can he enter the second time into his mother's womb and be born? That's how many of you think. You're carnal. When Christ said you had to be born again, Nicodemus scratched his head and said, How can a man be born again? He thought Christ was talking about literally. So he says, well, how can a man be born be born again? Does he have to jump back into his mother's womb a second time? No, Nicodemus. Stop being carnal. Christ is talking about spiritually. He's talking about come to me and be born again. Come to me because I am the bread of heaven. See the mistake that Nicodemus made from being a Pharisee? The Pharisees and the camps are carnal-minded. They don't believe these things, and yet they think that they're spreading fruit. They're doing more of a disservice than they're doing of a service, because spiritual things must be spiritually discerned. Do y'all understand that?